sometimes accessibility for me is actually worse.
Yeah.
Like less accessible. Because I'm playing Shadow of War again recently. It is so easy to do the free running in that game because it's all so automatic, so much of it, that I end up doing the wrong thing most of the time. Because it's automatically grabbing onto some ledge or jumping over this thing, and I'm like, no, it's not what I told you to do.
Thank you for listening to Games by Design, our podcast where we share experiences with video games and discuss what is engaging and enjoyable. I'm Aaron Bone, and I'm your host for this episode. And I'm joined today, as always, by the brothers Dunlap, Zach.
Hey!
And Nick.
Wahoo!
Now, each episode we'll be taking turns asking questions about game design and sharing our own experiences. And then at the end of the episode, we will each recommend a game that we enjoy to each other and to you. But first, we are going to be doing another one of our random question generators so that you guys can get to know us and laugh at these sometimes ridiculous topics. So, Nick, are you ready for a topic?
I'm ready. Hit me.
You're ready. Your question is, do you prefer to eat at home or eat out? Deep soul-searching,
Yeah. Let me think about the moral implications of this for a moment.
Take your time.
Let me analyze my principles. At home, I suppose. It tends to be easier and I have more control over what I'm eating, and it tends to be less expensive too. I'm going to go with home. I mean, each has its benefits, like it's, as a special occasion thing, it's nice to eat out.
Then you don't have to make anything.
Yeah, so it depends on the experience I want. That's a really safe answer, I guess.
Sure. Do you want control?
Depends.
Or do you want to be lazy?
It depends. That'll be the answer to all of them. It depends.
It depends.
It depends. Okay. Well, I will accept that answer. Listeners, you can choose whether to accept or reject, and we'll go to Zach.
Hey.
And your question, this is a good one for you. What was your least favorite subject in school?
Oh, man. School was my least favorite subject in school. I dropped out of elementary school before I dropped out of high school before I dropped out of college. I don't know how I got into the latter two, to be honest. But like more specifically and less flippantly, I suppose, I've never really had a mind for numbers.
Yeah.
So like math and statistics and stuff like that. I just don't. It's not that I don't understand the ideas. It's that they start swimming in front of me. Like they just all turn into goop, and I can't figure out what concepts to apply to this situation. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter how many math classes, remedial or otherwise, I've taken. It just never worked out for me very much. And so now it's like I feel like I can't even do the same math that I could do in the third or fourth grade, which was like long. I don't know if I could do long division anymore, like because it's been so long since I've done it. I don't know how to do fractions a lot of the time. It's embarrassing, but there you go. There's my answer.
We leave the math to the math people.
Yeah, like the calculators.
Leave it to the phones, they can.
Yeah, maybe that's why I've lost my ability. Is I've gotten lazy leaning on all the computers and technology around me. But is that so bad?
No,
they can do it. They're around me all the time. I always have one.
Does all the work we don't want to do.
Yeah.
If you listen to our episode last time, I got a question was what job I don't like, and for similar reasons as Zach, what job I would fail at miserably would be an accountant because numbers.
Yeah.
They are confusing.
They're just the worst.
They're the worst. And we are into game design, which deals with a lot of numbers and coding.
Wait. What?
This might be our last episode.
Thank you for listening to Games by Design. Bye.
Next time, we will talk about the best way to drop out of elementary school. Anyway, I need a question.
Yeah.
My question, this is a juicy one. What is your morning routine? Typically, my morning routine is to not have a morning. And
what's your afternoon routine then?
My afternoon routine. Usually, I get up, I get dressed, I brush my teeth, and then go to my afternoon class. And then eat lunch. So typical morning things like waking up early, breakfast, exercise, usually not a thing. However, this morning I did get up and it was still morning, and I did some logic homework, which is like math but without the numbers.
Yeah.
And which doesn't really make it all that different, but anyway, it's fun. It seems more applicable anyway. And I had some cereal, which counts as breakfast for most people. Long answer short, what is my morning routine? Usually non-existent, but starting to build some things that might count towards a morning routine in the future, if I decide to go that route.
To go the route of waking up in the morning.
Of recognizing mornings as a thing, yes.
I'm just impressed that you can do a podcast at the same time that you're in college. I don't think I could have done that. I did not have time or energy for it.
Yeah, it's, we won't talk about how well college is going at this point, but sacrifices need to be made at times. We focus on the important things.
Like podcasts.
Like podcasting. Anyway, those are our fun get to know you questions. Maybe get to know us a little too well. You may start distrusting what we have to say. But, we hope that you'll be along for the ride anyway. And now we get to the meat of our podcast, where we share our questions and experiences about games that we've been playing and try to get to that meat of game design. Just uncover that nugget. And while we may occasionally talk about games that have come out recently that might be in the zeitgeist, really we play what we want when we want, and we leave the news and reviews to other dudes. So, starting off our questions, Mr. Zach.
Hey.
I know
what is your question? What is your topic?
Oh yeah. Okay, so, well, here we go. I've been thinking, I was listening to another game design podcast with a lot more listeners recently. and I got an idea about what I wanted to talk about. And it was that there are a lot of games that seem to be built on the concept that the player is meant to master something, in the game. Whether that means getting really fast at finishing levels, it might be a racing game or it might be a platform or whatever. The idea is that you do it fast. You memorize the moves of an enemy in a game, or you get really good at reaction-based stuff like shooting, combat, or any kind of like game-specific mechanic, Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking, like, for some examples, I'm thinking about games like Dark Souls, or, which is very much about like timing and reaction and like watching your enemies and getting to know them really well through repeated exposure to them and stuff like that, or stuff like racing games, or even arena games or shooters. A lot first-person shooters. A lot of like really competitive games tend to be like this. So anything that demands some level of game-specific skill. And so my question is, what for you guys, what do your experiences tend to be with games that require you to get really good at playing that game, and what examples might you be able to share about your experiences there?
Gotcha. Well, if it wants me to do something I don't want to do, if I have to get good at something that I don't want to get good at, it's an instant turn off for me.
Yeah.
So I guess that's one of the reasons I never played competitive shooters or anything like that. But I don't have a problem generally with the idea of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like, you've played, 2 or 3 of the Dark Souls games all the way through, so...
Yeah, that's true. Those have those require you to understand the game, not just stuff outside the game, but the game itself, and to get good at the game.
At the game.
Yeah.
Get good.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Noobs. Well, I think most games have some element of this. I think kind of what makes it a game has some kind of challenge, has some kind of skill. You know, even going back to arcade games, it's all about reflexes and all about learning the levels and learning the enemies and attack patterns or game patterns. You know, I think there, you know, maybe a few, I don't know, narrative, more walking simulator, you know, that just want you to take in the story and get used to it. I think most games, you know, really have kind of the skill element that the more you play, you know, the more you invest in. I mean, for example, last time we were talking about Outer Wilds, and that game really requires you to become pretty skilled at navigating where in a zone where there's no gravity, either in a ship or, you know, with a jetpack or things like that.
Yeah. And it's fun too.
And I think it's fun. I think it's fun to have a game where you have the skill that you build throughout the game, where, you know, you start with something as frustrating or you don't get it, and then you get to a point where it's almost second nature to you. I think it's good to kind of have that progress in the game, to be able to see that, you know, even more than just, you know, narrative or story progress. You can see you yourself getting better at the game. You know, and the Dark Souls games are great with this, because until you're good at the game, you die over and over and over again. And you don't, you know, make much of that progress. But, you know, then you get, I don't know, maybe halfway through the game and you're realizing, oh, I kind of, you know, get what's going on here. And I know when to react, and I know when to roll, dodge, parry, you know, whatever. So I think, you know, as far as, and what was your question with this again, Zach? That there's these elements, and
what does your experience tend to be with games that require a high skill kind of thing?
Okay.
In order to play it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess experience-wise, the games that really, you know, something like Dark Souls, that requires a high skill, it can be really frustrating at first. And I think, you know, there's a few games where the beginning can be really frustrating, and it's tempting to put it down, to rage quit, be like, I don't get this game, and to step away. But then the experience of those times where you do follow through with it, I find it really rewarding to have this skill. And it's a skill, like, I don't know, there's often a lot of discussions about what skills video games actually teach you. Most of the time, it's how to play that specific game. I don't know if doing well at Dark Souls will help you
outside of Dark Souls
or whatever.
With math.
Maybe, you know, get good, do a hard thing.
I mean,
but yeah, it's rewarding.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I find the games that demand mastery, they can be tremendously satisfying. I think of the first time I took off in Outer Wilds off of the starting planet in my spaceship. I remember the first time I tried to land on a planet, and I was so tense because I wasn't sure exactly how to do it, and I was so terrified that I was going to destroy my ship. And then I think of later in the game where I was doing all this stuff, and it was second nature, and it was so easy. And I would hop into my ship and fly and land, and was doing crazy maneuvers. I was flying through the undercrust of, you know, this planet next to a black hole, and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And it was easy, and I think that's super satisfying. And there's it's cool knowing that you're the one who did that. It's cool being able to build skills. And I mean, like, I don't know necessarily want to go too far down this tangent, but as far as like practical skills you can take from games, I feel like some games teach you how to practice your skills, whether or not that's, you know, like, sure, playing Dark Souls might not be immediately relevant to whatever you're doing in your outside of Dark Souls life, but it certainly helps you hone the parts of your brain that help you learn how to do other things. I don't know, it's a learning process, and it is, and you are getting good at something. So if the only thing you're doing is learning how to learn, you're still learning, which I think is really cool, and that's something I appreciate about games that require me to get good at them.
Yeah.
Is that I have to engage and I have to use my brain and I have to exercise that, and that can be like physical mastery, like trying to get good at button prompts and trying to respond quickly, or it can be like understanding something a little more abstract, like winning my first war in Crusader Kings, or learning strategies and stuff like that in something like XCOM. So I think it can be really cool. I think it can be really cool.
That is really cool. And going back to there was so many interesting things that I want to talk about and would love to spend so much time talking about that we probably won't even be able to get to. But one of the things was that it's satisfying, but both of you guys said, it's satisfying to play a challenging game and then be able to, because eventually you get over that challenge and now you've accomplished something. Which is like the whole thing that Dark Souls is built on in the first place. You know?
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that, I feel like a lot of the time, if a game is handing me stuff too fast, too easy, I get frustrated and maybe even a little bit insulted. And it's like, okay, you don't need to give me all this free stuff. You can let me earn it. You know, and what was the game I was playing recently that was just handing me stuff way too easy? Shadow of War. I was playing the old, it's kind of old now, the old Warner Brothers game, the Shadow of War deal. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I got all this stuff I can earn and stuff like that. That'll be cool. I'll have a good time earning this stuff. And it just started giving me things. And I was like, wait, I wanted to earn that. Now it's all free. It feels kind of cheap now. You know, it's not really as cool. And so, you know, I don't know. I think a lot of AAA games struggle with that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be bringing up Skyrim every episode, but like it takes about 5 seconds for them to be like, "Whoa, you're so amazing."
Yeah, it's like you look at a lot of people have a problem with like the newest Fallout 4 versus Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas because power armor, this is a specific example, but power armor has like been this staple of the Fallout franchise. It's like when you get power armor, it means something. It's like you're a walking tank now. Like this is cool. And it's kind of a sign that you've made it in the wasteland or whatever. Yeah. And in Fallout 3 and in Fallout New Vegas, like getting power armor was hard. You had to play well into the game, and you had to. I played a little bit of a couple of these games, so this isn't personal experience necessarily, but there's things I've heard people talk about is that it was a challenge. In Fallout 4, the second mission, you have a suit of power armor, and it's like, well, okay, all right, well, this isn't cool anymore because everybody who plays Fallout 4 is going to have power armor in the first 3 hours.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, it just gives it to you.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's necessarily a problem that everybody else has it, but the problem is that you didn't have to do anything to get it.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I
agree. The issue isn't that everybody gets it. It's that it's that you didn't have to do anything to get it.
Right, yeah. And I do want to go down the rabbit hole that you skipped over, Nick.
Okay. Okay, great.
Because that was my next question, and we've already actually touched on this a little bit. But some games, as we've discussed in this episode and in previous episodes, they help us develop real-world understanding or skill of some kind. And we talked about The Witcher a couple episodes ago. I think it was episode 11. And we mentioned that it has helped us to reflect on our own moral beliefs and decision-making processes. And so, you know, that kind of a thing, for example. So what value, we've already kind of gone into this, but I want to go into it again and go deeper.
Yeah.
What value do you believe there is in challenging the player to develop game-specific skills that may or may not carry over into real life? Is there a difference? Because you mentioned, the whole like learning to learn is important.
Yeah.
And that's something that you get from every game. But yeah, so what value do you? I'll rephrase it. And I'll just say it again. What value do you believe there is in having the player learn in-game skills that may not obviously transfer over into the real world?
Gotcha.
I mean, I think especially, this might negate what I was saying earlier about, them just kind of teaching how to play a game. But I think games that have a significant challenge to them, and those games that you are kind of, failing at again and again and again until you finally succeed, I think they can help, develop a certain kind of grit or a certain kind of determination that you can, carry on about your life if you're faced with a task that you're struggling with, and you could be like, okay, well, this is just like that one Dark Souls boss that I died again and again and again. I just gotta keep doing it.
Well, I beat Celeste, so I can do this, doggone it.
Yeah, I mean, there is kind of a thing with that. I think in real life, being a college student, sometimes what gets me through a tricky project is thinking back on this other tricky project that I did. It's like, okay, well, I wrote this big long paper once, I can do it again. Or, I can do this, minor thing.
Yeah.
I think games, even though they are this virtual thing and the skills can be specific, you still are experiencing that sense of accomplishment, that sense of struggle, and, kind of that mental triumph and that overcoming and that process. I think that's all very real, even in a video game. So I think that if you're developing that, playing a specific game or learning a specific skill, or I don't know, maybe something like inventory management can help you be more efficient. But these challenges at least, I think can definitely help wire your brain in a way that you're able to stick to things more, or to meet your challenges head on.
I love that. That's so cool.
I don't think that games happen in a vacuum. I think that the what you feel in games and what you do in games, even if it's a little abstracted, there's still real feelings, and you're still taking real action, and so it affects you outside of the game because it's actually you. You're putting your actual self into this game, and so you're getting stuff out of it for your actual self. So,
and it's kind of like Aaron was just saying. It's like you're going through the process of learning, even if you're not learning something that might apparently be practical. Which is kind of a distinction that I have a problem with too. Like the skill of game design, for example, to many people is regarded as not practical, but it's really important, I think, and valuable. But because you and maybe there is no such thing as useless knowledge, and that might be a little bit broad and extreme, but to entertain it a little bit, like if you can learn how to learn something, then that means that you've learned how to learn something, so then you can learn how to learn something else,
Yeah.
And kind of like Aaron, or I don't remember which of you was saying something. I think it was both kind of a hodgepodge thing, but like I think that confidence is something that you have to earn. And I don't think that playing Dark Souls is going to improve your confidence with, women, for example, or the opposite sex, or the same sex, depending on what, whatever. And so,
what's your pickup line? Hey, I play Dark Souls.
Like that doesn't, I mean, like maybe in some circles that would make a difference socially, but like, but what I'm thinking is like, but it does teach you patterns that are applicable in real life. Like you try something, you fail at it, then you evaluate what you did, and then you try again, changing your approach a little bit, and then you eventually, and you do that over and over and over again, marking the progress that you've made until you finally realize how you actually can overcome this thing, and then you do it. And I think that while you might be doing it, it's just practice though. It's practical. It's practicing taking risks and exerting yourself and trying to, and you build confidence, I think, in your ability to make decisions and your own ability to think things through and overcome challenges, like you've already both said better.
Well, I think you've said it really well, actually. I think that's another reason that it really disappoints me when games just give me stuff, is because it's depriving me of that opportunity to grow and to learn. It's like, I could have had a cool experience here. I could have grown as a person from this. Yeah. But instead you said, well, I don't trust you enough to learn how to
be able to overcome this.
To be able to overcome this. Yeah. And so, the game just gives you things.
Yeah. And I think it's important to distinguish that there are different types of challenges. Yeah. And I don't think that everybody should feel like they should have to overcome every different type of challenge, Like if you're more interested in strategy challenges or puzzles, for example, then like by all means play a puzzle game or a strategy game rather than something with a lot of twitch reaction kind of skill challenge, and or even or like Guitar Hero or whatever. Is that still a game? But but if you're interested in the Twitch reaction shooters and Guitar Hero and stuff like that, then play those, and enjoy those and overcome those challenges, I think that's interesting.
So it's almost like the idea of a game, the idea of having this objective that is difficult to obtain, that we have to learn things to obtain that objective. Like just that idea, like is a good simulation for life. Is good training grounds for, in life we have these objectives that we don't know how we're supposed to meet, or these, goals that we want to reach in the future that we don't have the necessary skills to obtain yet. And that's something that we continually develop and reach for. And it's almost like games are kind of a microcosm of that.
Yeah. And like Nick was saying, it doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it affects you in your real life brain as well as you're doing that. Yeah.
They give you experiences, and they're real experiences. Yeah. That you can actually draw on and learn from. It's incredible. It's awesome.
That's cool.
I do think to go back a little bit and just kind of, if I could go back to the first question, just kind of about our experience with it.
Sure.
I think that frustration can come when the challenge aspect of the game is butting heads with another aspect of the game. So, for example, say you're really engaged in the narrative of this game and you want to continue it. Maybe you're in this epic final battle, or just this cool thing that you want to be immersed in, you want to feel, you want to see how it plays out, and you're coming up against this challenge aspect that's preventing you from experiencing it in the way that you want. For example, I recently played through Ori and the Blind Forest, and there was a point at the end where it's a particularly challenging platforming section, but also tied to this really interesting narrative aspect, and kind of this I don't know, it was presented in a way where I wanted to experience it with little interruption, to have to flow with it. But because the platforming was so challenging, and because you basically had to memorize it in order to do it right.
Yeah.
It took like 50 tries to get through it.
Yeah, I left that game with kind of a bad taste in my mouth because of that section. I was like, oh, man, that's
so you have that sense of accomplishment of finally did, but it's weakened by the fact of, but like now I don't even really care about this other aspect, because it's it's drama, it's weight, it's lost to me, and I'm just like, oh good, I'm done with it. I guess it's like instead of having that sense of accomplishment, it's just the sense of relief.
Yeah, that the pain is over now.
Yeah. And I think that can get in the way at times.
I agree. I think that's a really good point. And you bring up material for a lengthy discussion, I think. But that's all the time for my segment, I think. So, and I think we covered the ground that I wanted to cover. So,
good thoughts.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Thanks, Zach, for that. interesting stuff to think about. And I think as we branched off, like there's many different facets of that we could probably, explore in later episodes.
Yeah. I want to explore all these different tangents we touched on. Yeah.
What's a question or experience you have?
Yeah. Here is a question or experience that I have. So when I first played Morrowind, and mind you, I was pretty young at the time, I remember being overwhelmed by the massive chunks of text dialogue. I remember thinking that conversations were the most boring part of the game, and that I was really frustrated that I had to wade through this sea of text while everything around me paused. I would start ignoring any text I did not have to read. I would just read the highlighted bits to find out what was absolutely necessary. And so, but with later entries in the series, that was me younger, while ago playing the games. So with later entries in the series, Oblivion and then Skyrim, the dialogue was simplified into like a smaller multiple choice option kind of a thing. They also now had voice acting.
What a voice acting.
Yeah. And I remember initially thinking that it was pretty cool. It was easier to understand, at least. It was more accessible. And as I played Skyrim especially, though, I began to become frustrated at how limited my options in these conversations were. No longer could I ask anyone any question I wanted. I couldn't try to bribe or coerce or persuade anybody to like me more or to listen to me. Like, everyone talked, and that was great. I mean, they all sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and, that's great. It's very entertaining. But I missed the flexibility that was offered by the older, somewhat archaic system from Morrowind.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that? What do you think of... like, we can talk about dialogue, sure, but the concept I want to get to really is the accessibility offered by, like, the later games versus the flexibility offered by Morrowind. And, with elements like voice acting coming into play. And, like, trying to make it more understandable to the audience. What do you think about that conflict? What have your experiences been with that conflict? Accessibility versus, like, flexibility and...
maybe even, like, freedom or open... I don't know, just options.
Yeah, options. Yeah. Even if it's a little more confusing.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to know.
So flexibility versus accessibility.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, my favorite game right now is Crusader Kings.
I guess we know where you stand.
Yeah. And I like Morrowind more than I like Skyrim. So I guess that does kind of put me on that side of the argument, doesn't it?
But
at the same time, I keep going back to Skyrim more than I go back to Morrowind. So that's interesting.
Yeah, why do you think that is?
Well, I think part of it is that it's dated.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Morrowind is really old and has a lot of, like, other problems. Like, the combat system just is not as satisfying.
Mm-hmm.
But I had so much freedom in that game, and compared to the newer ones, it's just not even a contest really in my mind. Like, I could do whatever. I could totally live out whatever story I wanted to in Morrowind.
Mm-hmm.
In Skyrim and Oblivion, they kind of spell it out for you and then say, okay, now go do a little bit within these very specific guidelines. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think as games advance, just like everything else in life, we get used to certain things and we kind of become spoiled. Like, back when Morrowind came out, voice acting, consistent voice acting, I don't think was really a thing, at least not in, that size of a world. So you wouldn't go in expecting, that you would have that, used to that.
Yeah.
But now, just as, we went years and years without anyone having a cell phone, and now people can't, go an hour without their smartphone. We kind of become used to things. And I'm not gonna lie, I do appreciate, a bit of voice acting in games, even if it's just like some audible reaction or or something.
Yeah.
You could do the Nintendo thing where they're like, ah!
Yeah, but even that, I remember, like the older Zelda games where they'd have that. Like, it's fun. It's
old Zelda games.
I don't know. I don't, like, Breath of the Wild added some voice acting, and not all of it is
good.
The greatest. I don't think it's
Tolerable.
terrible by any means, but playing the older games, like I didn't really found I missed it, and I still had those reactions. But then I was playing the newest Pokemon game, I think Pokemon Shield, and there was nothing. There was no noise, no reaction, no little and it was just dead and lifeless.
Yeah.
And so I think it depends on the type of game as well. If it kind of has this fun, lively style of game, and you're just reading text attached to characters, and they don't really have personality or expression beyond that, you can feel like you're missing something, and it can be frustrating. I think if you're already playing a game like Morrowind, you're already kind of that type of gamer that appreciates those systems and appreciates the specificity that it allows you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think as games continue to go on and on, like, it will be harder to, at least for the average person, to go back to, games that had a bit more archaic systems or required more of the player than what the game was giving.
Mm-hmm.
I guess to bring it back to the flexibility versus accessibility thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just sometimes accessibility for me is actually worse.
Yeah.
Like less accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm playing Shadow of War again recently in the last couple of weeks, and like it is so easy to do the free running in that game because it's all so automatic, so much of it, that I end up doing the wrong thing most of the time because it's automatically grabbing onto some ledge or jumping over this thing, and I'm like, no, it's not what I told you to do. But then of course it's your input is so small compared to what you actually do because it's so contextual and automatic, so that it will be easier and more accessible.
That's really interesting.
And so like and like I kind of imagine that Outer Wilds just wouldn't have been as fun if it just like took if your spaceship controlled like a car. But because you had to deal with there is no up and down in space, and I have to think about,
and here's the solar system rendered in real time, moving in real time.
Exactly. Because of that, like it was fun to overcome the challenge, like we were just talking about a little while ago, to of mastering that more that system that provided you more flexibility, but was a little bit less accessible.
It's really interesting.
So this is thing with me for a lot of action games, actually. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, because a lot of games will have options that you can kind of toggle to make it more accessible.
Right.
To make more free. Like, for example, in Outer Wilds, you could have the option that time freezes whenever you're in a conversation or wherever you're reading something. So that can kind of give you more time, and you're not reading something while the sun explodes. But then I also noticed that when you freeze conversations, it also freezes their animation, and so then the characters just look lifeless.
I don't think that's the intended way to play.
So, but it is interesting that there's that trade-off. I also, Mario Odyssey has this assist mode to it, and I never played it. I never, knew anybody that played it, but I was watching this video of this guy he typically speed runs Mario Odyssey, but he was like, okay, I'm going to play it the way Nintendo intended. And he turned on the assist mode, and there's just this linear path of arrows directing you to the next objective. Like,
it's so interesting.
Just these gaudy blue arrows in a straight line. And if you played Mario Odyssey, it's not about those straight lines. It's about running around and just finding things. But he was playing it following all the arrows. Sometimes they just go through an enemy and he just run through them. Or it's like, there's a moon to the side where he's like, the arrows aren't pointing me that way, so I'm not going to get that moon. He was kind of making a funny video to show just kind of how ridiculous his mode is. But, taking away that freedom and just having this, quote unquote accessibility, it just totally took away from like I can only see like maybe a 2-year-old playing that game would benefit from that.
Right.
Yeah, but it's
But
yeah.
And, let's
maybe
I don't know.
Maybe
even just let them run around and have fun.
Sorry, what?
I said even they should just run around and have fun and jump in the lava if they want to.
Yeah, and maybe accessibility isn't the best word. I'm thinking like approachability. Like when I'm talking about this, it's not like people who can't play games.
Right.
It's people. It's like making making it smoother. Like I mean, it's the Skyrim. Oh, I only have 3 options, and I can hear this guy and see his animations and stuff like that. As opposed to Morrowind with its blobs of text and its little hyperlinks all over the place. Like, you have to learn something there, and maybe this is tied more to that whole mastery thing, kind of like
maybe
because you do have to learn the systems a little bit with a lot of this other stuff. Like a lot of survival games or a lot of crafting games or stuff like that. The barrier to entry is a little harder. They can be really satisfying experiences though. So
yeah, and I think we're skirting dangerously close to that should Dark Souls have an easy mode question. which is
Dark Souls have an arrow on the ground.
Go this way. Also pick up that item, you might need it.
We're not having a conversation.
You want to kindle at this bonfire.
But and you're right, like accessibility may not be quite the right word, or maybe a different definition of accessibility would be more accurate, because we're not talking about people who have the inability to push the button fast enough, which is getting harder for me now, and also or like color blindness, or like just you can't read that fast because you might be dyslexic or something like that, or you just don't read that fast.
Or you're physically just unable to like accomplish what the game's asking you to do, or mentally or whatever.
I think that's a completely different issue. But you're talking about like should we be trading off the breadth of options in because it'd be more simple,
because it'd be easier,
more
comfortable,
more less challenging, maybe, and so because it's less challenging, it's more playable for a lot of people. Is that what you're talking about?
I think so.
Yeah,
and it's just, I don't know, it's I think so. It's closer to what people are used to. I mean, like when in Fallout 4, now the main character is voiced, so you have even less options because they have to record everything for the voice actor there. So like, sure, this game might be a little more cinematic or something, like you have a voice now, but you're losing so much more of what makes games so unique, and use your control and your input over the environment and the way characters react, because you have to put animations on everything, or you have to voice everything. So like if you have to choose between them,
And I guess there's like a few different ways that you can approach this problem.
Oh yeah.
Like you could be, Skyrim or Fallout, to pick on Bethesda again, because we always do. Maybe we should just embrace it. We change the name of this podcast to Picking on Bethesda. But I played their games a lot. Okay, that means I like them. It's not all bad.
They're good at what they do. Or what they
whether what they do is good is another question. But you could take their route, which is like, just having fewer options and less flexibility in Fallout and Skyrim and stuff like that, because you want to have animations and voices and stuff on everything, and you don't want to record 5,000 things. Or you can take the Witcher approach, where you do record 5,000 things, and you just have the time and resources to devote to that. And so, or I think you can do a different approach, where you can take Sid Meier has this thing. Sid Meier's, does his name have an S in it?
It's just Sid. I think Sid Meier's is like, this belongs to Sid Meier.
Yeah, he puts Sid Meier's on everything. But Sid Meier, the guy who's come up with Civilization and all of those other big deal strategy games that he's done. Yeah, he has this thing where he's like, hey, I'll tell you a secret. He was at a GDC thing. He's like, I'll tell you a secret about designing games. You can save a lot of money if you use this trick, which is letting the player's imagination do all of the work for you. And so he's like, and the example he gave was like one of the Civilization games, you know, this caravan apparently is supposed to come to you with all of these riches and these luxuries and things like that. It's the tribute to you or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he says, now I could have animated that, but I thought, you know what, that'll take a lot of time and money and resources that aren't that important. So instead, I'll just like display that, you know, like they present this just text. It's just text. And he said they bring this caravan laden with elephants and they bring these spices and these cloths. And I'm paraphrasing and riffing on it because I don't remember exactly what he said, but like, mm-hmm. you know, that thing. Yeah, you know, I think that there's there's 3 different options that I see right now.
Yeah.
You know, like don't have a lot of options, which is not my favorite. Uh-huh. Record a bajillion different things if you're The Witcher 3 uh-huh. and you can handle that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Or do the Sid Meier approach where you tap in, you evoke the thing instead of having to show the thing.
Yeah.
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 I mean, like we played Crusader Kings 3 and all of us had really rich social lives inside that game, even though there is no voicing or animations or anything.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, have you guys had other experiences where you were grateful that something was left to your imagination? Or were grateful that there was that they didn't spend the resources on it? I'm just curious.
I mean, I don't think Dwarf Fortress would be what it was if it was trying to look like a AAA game.
Yeah.
You know, and like
it couldn't be what it is.
It absolutely could not be what it is, and like it's definitely not for everybody. Like I don't even know if it's for me. Uh-huh. But it's but for the people that it's for, it is like it's a whole nother level of game, you know.
It's a whole nother it's like that game was made for that person kind of.
Exactly.
It's so specifically what the people who would want to play that game would want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Aaron, you were going to say something.
I'm trying to think. Example where a game kind of let you fill in the blanks, basically, or how that was rewarding.
Yeah, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess if it never happened, it never
happened. Never happened. That's okay too.
Because here's the thing: I'm a dirty casual gamer, and so my introductions to games were with the all the latest bells and whistles and things. So I kind of have to force myself to go back and play these games that didn't utilize as much. Or and I guess we shouldn't say that because it's more of a creative choice rather than a resource
technological thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But. Okay. Here's a thing. So there's this will actually kind of go into my thing, so I won't go too much into it. But I'm not the biggest fan of like turn-based RPGs. Where it's just like, oh, you attack me, and then I attack you, and then we'll go back and forth. Yeah. But I was playing. I don't know if either of you have played the South Park RPG games. But,
no, I have not.
But they're pretty fun. But because it's like an RPG and it has its turn based, but then it also kind of has these button presses that you time it right and you can kind of get some bonus effects. But because you're just playing these kids that are just kind of playing make-believe that they're in some like Dungeons and Dragons thing or in this attack and everyone's looking at you weird, like it wouldn't really work if it was really cinematic or real-time action, like just these little cutesy animations or more gross things because it's South Park. Just kind of static timed with it really kind of hits that point home. So I guess, I don't know, that was the thing I could pull in my head. It was like, well, let's see, if I took a more realistic or more cinematic, I guess seems to be the word that keeps coming up, approach to this, I think it would take away from it rather than how it is. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks for your thoughts. I think we've talked about some interesting stuff just with like how high production value can both add and detract in some ways, depending on where your focus is with your budget when it comes to that kind of stuff.
And we have definitely seen how it can add to the experiences with
certainly.
like something like The Witcher 3 or The Last of Us or something like that. Like The Last of Us, for example, as amazing as it is, wouldn't be that if it didn't have all the bells and whistles that it does have with the beautiful animation and the incredible voice acting and stuff like that. It's
and again, I think it's a matter of The Last of Us has that. It also doesn't have a lot of other stuff. Like, it's a matter of specialization. It's a matter of focusing on what the game experience is supposed to be. And so I don't think we can expect... I think Bethesda is trying to make a different game with Oblivion and Skyrim and now Fallout 4. And that's carrying it farther from what made those games mean something to me. But, like, that is a valid thing.
Yeah,
I think
they're allowed to do that.
Yeah, and so, like, I've been... they can do that.
I can't stop them.
Yeah. But
you didn't make the game I wanted. Okay, don't buy it.
but thanks for your thoughts, guys. I think that wraps up.
I think too. I'll just add. I think we've talked about this before. There's a lot of creative value in the idea of restraint. Not just we do it just because we can. Rather than something that's actually makes sense for what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Look at Fumito Ueda, the Eco and Shadow of the Colossus. Gosh.
Yeah, the whole design by subtraction.
Yeah, he's a love his stuff. It's awesome.
That's great.
Well, yeah, thanks. That's my segment. Thanks.
Thanks for that.
You're good.
So my question, my quandary here, kind of, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of our questions this week kind of blend in with each other. But I think it could make for a good discussion. But so mine, and similar to Zach, this wasn't necessarily coming from a game I was playing, but I was watching this video. I mentioned how traditional RPGs, I have a hard time getting into them. And there's this video of this guy on YouTube, and it was titled, "I Am Not an RPG Guy." And so he kind of went through these different reasons. He kind of had some skits and things in between. But anyway, in his actual discussion, he kind of went in, some issues that he saw with some of the traditional RPG structure. And one of them that I thought was really interesting was that, so you have this idea of an RPG, which, by its name is a role-playing game. The idea is to immerse you in this world, to immerse you in its characters and its lore, and, have a lot of depth to it. A lot of traditional RPGs are known for their depth and for, a lot of their possibility and their freedom.
Yeah.
But then you have this other side to traditional RPGs, not really talking about the action RPGs, but more, kind of the traditional turn-based kind of thing, is that in the combat, it's done in a way that's not immersive at all. That takes you out of it. It's like, oh, I'm in this adventure, I'm doing this thing, I'm talking to these people, and now, run into these bad guys. Okay, take your turn, and then, you attack. Okay, then I'll attack, and then, I'll add this buff, and then, okay, they're going to do that. It's... And I just thought that was interesting, that you kind of, the purpose of this game and what you're trying to get to, and then, one of the main components of these types of games totally goes against that. I just kind of wanted to talk about that. Maybe that in specific, just maybe, what are those instances in games where, it's trying to do one thing. As I say, this kind of leads into what you guys were talking about. It's trying to do one thing, but then, one key aspect of it seems to go against that, and your experiences with that, or your thoughts about games that do that.
This might be a little bit... So if I'm understanding your question right, Aaron, it's like a game that is otherwise sound, that has something that is just so confounding that you're like, why is this here?
Yeah, and specifically, the thing that's interesting about RPGs is, that's a tenet of RPGs is, it's this, these, traditional JRPGs or regular RPGs, it's this turn-based combat, that's a thing, but it's well, that doesn't help me roleplay, really. So... Yeah, if there's other instances you notice in games like that, or just in experiences you've had with something like that in a game, and how you, I don't know, if you agree or if you disagree, what's your thoughts?
Oh, man. Well, I've definitely experienced that one before with turn-based. I remember the first time I played Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh, yeah.
That old Star Wars game. I was I mean, this isn't really anything fresh. It's just agreeing with you, Aaron. Like, I was having a fun time getting into these conversations and walking around and stuff. And then the combat started, and I was like, ooh, action-packed? Not action-packed, never mind. It's turn-based, you know? And because it's turn-based. And, like, because it's turn-based, it can be more strategic and tactical and stuff like that, which is fun.
I think it's serving a specific kind of experience.
Yeah. It just didn't. But I remember being so disappointed with that. In fact, that I never played it again after the first time I picked it up back in my Xbox One days. Not Xbox One, the first Xbox. Gosh,
the other Xbox One.
Yeah. But yeah, no. That's all right now. I'm still thinking, but like I definitely know what you're talking about with that specific one, that specific problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, and I think strategy is important, and that's a big thing. But I think when your entire idea, and I'm just, like I said, I watched this video and I agreed, so these aren't even all originally my thoughts. But when your entire idea is to immerse yourself in the world, and then all of a sudden you're not the character, you're like commanding this group of characters to do things. It kind of takes you out of that.
Yeah, it's a little odd.
I think it's RPG is such a general term.
It is.
And so, like, I think it's just a different approach. Like, because games are an abstraction, anyways. You're not. It's not my preferred approach. I don't love turn-based combat in an otherwise real time game.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I can fault. I don't know, it's just not my preference. It's not my interest. I don't think if it's representing something, if what they want to focus on is the strategy of the battle and people working in teamwork, sure, I can see how that'd be a little harder to do in real time.
Yeah,
it's interesting to see how like the most recent Final Fantasy has a real time system where you're jumping between characters. The Final Fantasy VII, whatever it's called, the remake, where it's a game that was a turn-based combat game that has been turned into a real-time one, but has evidently retained some of the elements. It's just kind of interesting.
Well, that's almost kind of my thing with that, is like it almost seems like kind of this archaic mechanic that is stuck around in newer games. And again, if it is like a more commanding an army type game, or like you are like the strategist of everything, not like playing a specific character, I think turn-based can be fine and you can have some fun strategy there. But I think that when these games originally came out, they didn't have the capability for the real-time action that we're used to now, and so that's what they were left with, is like, this is role-playing game, this is as immersed as we can get with it, but this is the only way that we can do action right now. And I feel like that because that was in the traditional idea of these games, it's now kind of fused into a part of it, when, again, it really kind of belies the actual purpose of those types of games. Anyway, that's my thought on that, but that doesn't really enrich the question. Sorry, Zach, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me of... going back to Skyrim again. I made a snippet out of this one. This particular thought. It's the game that keeps on giving. Yeah, probably not in the way it meant to. Okay, I should pause here and make a sidebar. I have played the heck out of that game, and I have had so much fun with it. So all my criticisms come from a place of like, I've played so much of it, so clearly, I enjoy it to a certain degree, a lot. Mm-hmm. Anyway. Back to criticizing it. A couple episodes ago, was it last episode? No, 2 episodes ago, episode 11, I think it was. We talked about how I brought up the whole segmented open world thing, where like the entire point of this open world game is to feel like you can go anywhere, and that it is an open world, not segmented levels and things like that. Mm-hmm. And then it isn't segmented. It is an open world. It is there. It's all there to be explored and enjoyed and stuff like that. However, the fast travel mechanic kind of makes it feel segmented, even though it isn't. And so that's something that I think kind of follows along with what you're talking about, Aaron. Is like, this is the
Yeah.
experience it's trying to do, and for convenience, and for a more playable game, it adds the fast travel thing, because without it, that game would be very, very unfun much of the time. But it works against it by making it feel more segmented and not working.
It seems contrary to the core experience of
Yeah.
the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Game Maker's Toolkit has a video about Mirror's Edge Catalyst, and I'm just going to reference that because it talks in more detail about this idea. But I had the same experience, so I'll just share my own experience as if it were my own thought. Playing that game, there's a ton of collectibles. So it's a parkour game. You're running around all the time.
Yeah, it's cool.
Right.
There's a ton of collectibles that in order to get, you just got to stop. And it is lengthy. I mean, lengthy. It's probably like 3 seconds. But when you're going when you're sprinting down the buildings, running from the oppressive government, evil police guys, 3 seconds is a long, tedious amount of time. Also, I'm there to run. So you stop and you go through this little cutscene where you tear off this thing and pick up this collectible.
Oh,
and
I
after
hate that.
the first
I remember
two, never touched another one.
Yeah,
Because
I
it
hated
was
those.
so frustrating because here is a game about movement and about exploration and about speed.
Yeah.
And about momentum, and the game just grinds to a halt every time you want to get one of these little goodies that also don't really do much for you anyway. But I was so frustrated by that, and I questioned its inclusion. It's like, here's something that dissuades me from engaging with the most fun part of the game. And granted, that game is, it's got some challenges, but it was still fun to move around, and that's what I came there for. And so, the fact that a part of the game that it kept shoving in my face was so contrary to that was surprising to me, and made me raise my eyebrow, and made Mark Brown from Game Maker's Toolkit raise his eyebrows too. Watch his video; it's great. It's called "What Mirror's Edge Catalyst Could Have Learned from Burnout Paradise," I think.
Oh yeah, Burnout Paradise is a great example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Brown raises his much more significant and impressive eyebrow.
Yeah, you don't drive in a Burnout Paradise and then stop to collect things in the middle of a race.
Yeah, exactly.
No, you barrel through the signpost that's in the middle of the road and you keep going. It's fun.
Yeah, all the collectibles are things that you don't have to stop. You have to crash through them, which is the whole point of that game.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
it's
I love
beautiful.
it. I've finished it 4 times.
I love Burnout Paradise. Play Burnout Paradise, please. Anyone who has it. No, not. But really, it's great.
Oh, I should have used that for my recommendation.
You still can.
Anyway, I hope that helps to kind of answer your question, though, Aaron. I think that those are a few pretty good.
No, yeah, that's a great example, and I think, just thinking from a design perspective, I think these are things that are important. That when you're designing a game and you're designing a specific type of game and you have this purpose behind it, and then maybe you add something because that's what other games are doing, or because you want this element. If Mirror's Edge was okay, we have this fun parkour game, but if we could, achievements are all the rage right now, so if we can kind of get in on that and have these, completionists have something for them, they add that into the game, and then it completely takes away from the spirit of the rest of the game. I think that's an important thing to address.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's this reminds me of when I was playing Plague Tale. I don't remember if I was talking to you guys in this episode or not this episode, in a different episode, or if it was just off audio. But
I remember you talking about the game.
Yeah, it's like The Last of Us, but the Black Death edition, and and so it has a lot of things that the Black Death that The Last of Us had, including the crafting benches and stuff like that The Last of Us had. Yeah. But the way that it implemented them was just bizarre. Firstly, because it's not a game. I'm probably retreading old ground here, but I want to say it anyway.
Say it.
The Last of Us is a game about surviving in a resource-scarce environment where everything matters, and so you have to pick up everything, and then everything can be repurposed and used for survival. Plague Tale is different, and so. And it just it just didn't work as well. The tables, for one thing, were too close together, so I never had enough resources gathered in between tables to use them, and so I was like, well, it's not a relief to find one of these things like it was in The Last of Us, because they just haven't implemented this properly. And I think that game very clearly takes a lot of inspiration from The Last of Us. And so when you mentioned, Aaron, that some games are including things because other games have them, that's what I think of. And I think that you're right. Like, that's not why you should put something in your game. If you're chasing a trend, you will always be behind the trend. It'll always be already, I mean, if it's something you've noticed, that means it's already crested, it's already on the downslope after that. You know? So, but if you have a good, compelling, creative reason, then you can ignore all the trends and say, hey, this is something that I think would make this specific game better objectively, regardless of what everybody else is doing. And then you do that, and then, hey, you got a good game that people play for the next 30, 40 years or something.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I agree.
Yeah, it's like, just pure imitation robs innovation, right? That it's just, oh, well, they did this and this was popular, just do that. I think there's a way you can see these as tools that you can then put in your own game, put in your own idea for a new specific reason, not just to make The Last of Us, but with the Black Death, or like Mirror's Edge, but now with collectibles. Like I think there's nothing wrong with borrowing from certain games, but you need to have a specific reason that is consistent with your vision of your game in order to make it work.
I an example of this that I really like is Breath of the Wild's use of the tower, which has become a staple of a lot of open world games. Is this big tower that you find, popularized by Ubisoft, like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry and stuff like that. You find this tower and you go to the top and it fills in your map and you see all where you can get all your missions and stuff like that. And Breath of the Wild does have this, but notably it's missing a lot of those features. Like, it helps you reveal more of the landscape, but all you get is a map, right? All you get is, you get minimal information. It's really just there for a vantage point. I think you can see that Nintendo looked at what everyone else was doing and went, great, that's cool. This is what's cool specifically, though. They didn't just yoink, the entire Ubisoft tower and stick it in Zelda. They said, what works for Zelda from this? And they put that in the game. And nobody complains about the towers in Breath of the Wild.
Every time you found a tower, all these icons appeared on your map about where things were at. It would completely take away from the spirit of the game.
I agree completely. So that's a good way of doing it. That's a good positive example of the right way to do things, I think. But Breath of the Wild is rife with good examples. I think it was just so well done.
I think it is a great example of a game that took what other games were doing and then took those pieces and innovated an entire new experience from it that now other games are trying to imitate. And I think less successfully.
That was an interesting one.
So that's basically my thought.
That's a good thought.
Again, I don't think and it may be a little harsh in those traditional RPGs at first. I think, as we talked about, it's all on your taste and what games you like and what kind of mechanics like and dislike. But I think that is an important concept about game design, about having this consistent vision throughout, and that everything fits with that. That fits with your objective as a designer for what you want your game to be and how it comes together. And I think it's a more satisfying experience when it's all come together like that. But the video, if you're interested in more of the stuff about some interesting things about RPGs, both positive and negative. It was by this channel, Scott the Waz, and it was I'm Not an RPG Guy. So
awesome, great.
It was fun.
Good.
Well, great. So that's our discussion portion. Thank you, gentlemen, for really. I liked how the discussion all just kind of fed into each other this time, and
That works.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's cool. You know, if we bring things up multiple times, that just means it's important, right? Or it's interesting, or it's worth thinking about.
So
again.
expect to hear about Skyrim again.
So we will talk about Skyrim again. We will talk about Dark Souls again. We will talk about Witcher again.
I think the podcast should be called "Is Why the Witcher is Great and What Skyrim Could Learn from It" or something like that.
You know, when we do our game. When we do our game highlight on The Witcher, we can title that episode.
Oh boy! Yeah.
But I mean, Witcher's got problems too. These are, you know, every game.
Yeah, no.
But that's
Yep.
I think it's good. We can talk again. Okay, but now we get to the portion called "Think of a Good Game," where we recommend a game for each other and for you, the listener, to play. So, Mr. Zach, what is a good game that you'd like to recommend?
All right. When I was a child, I had a floppy disk.
Can you still play this game?
I think that you can get it if you have like an emulator and stuff like that.
Is this a good game that we can find now?
I'm sure it's possible.
Okay.
All right. So but I got so much of a kick out of this game when I was a kid. 1991's SimAnt, by Will Wright of Sim fame. You know, you guys play that one?
I played this game. It was like at a museum. They had like a kiosk with this game. Yeah,
I loved the crap out of that.
I played that game in a museum.
But the idea
belongs in a museum.
Belongs in a museum.
It's like a real-time strategy game simulation, but you're playing as an ant, a particular ant, but you're kind of like guiding your ant colony, you know, and you live in the backyard of this suburban house. And the idea is that you're supposed to take over the entire yard because you have the red ants. They're the bad guys. I guess ants are inherently racist or something. I don't know. But like the point is you got to get rid of the other ones, the other colored ants, and then because you're blue and they're red, and then once you've done that, you got to take over the house from the people too. And so it's I think it's incredibly clever. Yeah. I think it's incredibly clever. You got to deal with spiders and antlions and the other ants and the lawnmower and the dog that lives in the house and the cat. And sometimes it rains and that's like a huge deal. And you dig your own little tunnels and you make your own little ant colony thing underground and you collect food. And then every time you die as an ant, you get reborn as a different ant, you know, in the same colony, and then you advance your goals like you were doing before. I got such a kick out of that game when I was a kid, and I don't think I even understood it, but I had so much fun with it. And like looking back on it, I'm like, that is so clever and so like way to take something like so mundane and make it like fun and exciting and like, you know, even educational a little bit, I guess, but like not in a preachy kind of a way, you know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it have like a little blurb about the like different ants or spiders or things that you run into? Or
I don't recall, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know. Maybe this was just the museum edition that I played 5 minutes of it at this museum one time. So that's
museum edition.
here's the pits with the ant lions that would eat you up, and
those guys are terrible. But here's a little blurb from the game. Here's an educational segment for you. You get caught by the spider, and it says, "Your guts are dissolved and then drained away as you are desiccated by the spider." So I guess you learned what it's like to be on the receiving end.
There's some making the player use their imagination right there.
Oh yeah.
So they could have animated that, but they wanted to keep an E rating or whatever.
Yep.
That's the Oregon Trail strategy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have died of desiccation.
Being dissolved by a spider. That's awesome. I'll have to I don't know, scour Steam or something. See
yeah, me too.
That game still exists.
I gotta find it again.
Be playable on a modern computer. Maybe they'll port it to Switch. Okay. SimAnt. Wow.
You bet.
Cool.
That's my game.
Nick, you think of a game?
Yeah, well, mine's not quite floppy disk ancient, but it is a couple of console generations ago. So we're talking PlayStation 3.
Okay.
I played this game. I played it. I played it. That's why I'm recommending it. So Ratchet and Clank was a series that I played on and off throughout my childhood. But this was the one that I played the most because I had access to it for the longest. It was always somebody else had it. But Ratchet and Clank, A Crack in Time, still holds a very dear place in my heart.
It's so funny.
It is so... Insomniac, this is Insomniac Games, the guys who made it. They're the same ones who made the original Spyro games and are now making Spider-Man games because, they do whatever.
Yeah.
They just did a lovely job. It's heartfelt, it's sincere, it's oodles of fun. It's explosive and bombastic, and the characters are fun. It is, I don't know, it's something that I loved as a kid, and I haven't played it in a while, but I trust that I would love if I were to try it again. So, Ratchet and Clank, A Crack in Time specifically, which is a later game in the series, but I recommend it. It was great. I liked it a lot.
I remember thinking that one was so cute.
Mm-hmm. It
Awesome.
is. It really is.
Well, I believe a new Ratchet and Clank is coming to the PS5 at some point.
That is true.
And it's got like crazy interdimensional skipping, platforming, something, and I don't know. It's been used to like show off the PS5 several times.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Go check out the old game. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
What's your
my
game,
game.
Aaron?
Yeah. So this is a little game. I was playing it a few days ago. It's called Horace. It's
Horse.
Horse.
Horace.
Oh,
Like
Horse.
the
I thought you
name.
were talking about like the basketball game.
Oh, see, I was thinking like the
Horse.
animal, the quadruped that is often used.
It's
for
this is
riding.
the My Pony thing or whatever the game is.
Horace. Yeah.
No,
I know what
Horace.
you're
It's
talking about.
it's an interesting game. I think it's by 505 Games, and it's like kind of a platformer, but it's also got a lot of narrative and dialogue in it, and it's just really quirky. It's got a lot of personality.
That's cool.
Like, I knew nothing about it when I started playing it. I just saw somebody say, "Hey, this is a good game, and it's on sale," and so I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I don't think I really want to explain really even what's going on, but there's some platforming elements, and there's kind of a certain mechanic that's used that you're kind of gathering these things up, but just the way that the story plays out and the writing's just really witty and funny, and it keeps shaking up the gameplay a little bit, and it can be a bit uneven at times with the gameplay, but it's just got so much personality. I think you guys would enjoy it.
Yeah. Cool. I think I actually have that one because it was one of the free
It's on
games on
Epic.
Epic that I never got
Was it
to.
for
I
Epic?
played a bit of it actually. It is an interesting game.
It's weird. Like, it's
It's weird. It is so weird.
but it's like it's kind of British, and it's got this
It's kind of British.
dry wit to it that's fun, and throw in these like pop culture references. I don't know. I only played a couple hours of it, but it's fun.
Cool.
Cool.
You can
Horace.
find that,
I will
I guess, on PC,
Horace.
or it's also on the Switch. So
Oh, nice.
Good.
yeah, that's where I played it. Well, awesome. Well, these are some good games that you can check out if you're looking for one. And that brings us to the conclusion of our episode.
Hey.
Thanks everyone for the discussion for the games. Next time we will have another great episode led by Zach.
Oh, yeah.
And then at the end of the month we'll have another game highlights, and this time we are playing Hades, the Supergiant roguelite phenomenon. It's awesome. Real looking forward to discussing that. But yeah, that's all the time we have today, and we'll catch you next week.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.